is consumer well-being. So it's not just, how do you make a product that's effective, or how do you sell something in an effective way. Part of it is what contributes to consumers' well-being, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And we're talking about stuff versus experience. Like what makes people happier? Buying stuff or buying experiences, right? So Nike socks, I think they're probably a pair of Nike socks are probably $12, maybe $15. And you compare that with like a dinner for a friend, depending on where you go, you could probably get dinner for $12, $15, right? Roughly the same price as a pair of socks. So which one is going to contribute more to happiness? That's it. It's a question, right? What do you think?
Varies greatly on how fluffy and comfortable the socks are.
I mean, I'm going to assume they're going to be reasonably good socks, and probably depend on the meal too.
But still an experience either way.
Yeah. So one way to address this question is what these researchers did was they asked people about some purchases. How much value do you expect to get out of it, and how much value did you actually get from it? And just so this makes sense, I think these are Chuck Taylors, they're $40. It's possible to buy something for $40 and feel like you got $35 worth of value out of it, right? So you spent X on it, but you don't really feel like you got X out of it. I went to Winger's the other night, got a burger that was $12. I don't think I got $12 a burger out of it. It was a $12 burger. I think I got $8 a burger out of it. Does that make sense? What's that?
Sounds like the burger was awful.
It wasn't awful, it just wasn't a $12 burger.
So is that like the same as what you'd be willing to pay for it? Kind of.
It's a little bit different because these are things that people are actually buying, right? Or actually bought. So either that you're going to buy or that you actually bought. So shoes, skiing, about the same price, right? So, if you're going skiing, or if you've gone skiing, the lift ticket was $40 or whatever. Did you get $40 worth of experience out of it, or is it $35, or is it $45? Right, and the same. You could also go so you can have a burger, and maybe you feel like you got more than $12 worth of burger out of it, right? So, but kind of before knowing the results, you could make two reasonably good predictions that would go in opposite directions. So, does anyone know what the term hedonic adaptation means? Has anyone seen this before? I mentioned it once in this class.
It was in the book, but I get them mixed up. So there's hedonic and utilitarian, right?
Yeah.
And so hedonic is when you have more of like an enjoyable experience, and then utilitarian is where you don't really care about the purchase, you're just in a hurry and get it out, right?
Right, so hedonic refers to pleasure. So hedonic adaptation means that you've adapted to the pleasure. To give you an example, I bought a TV over the summer, a 4K TV, and the first month or so, I was like, oh my gosh, look at that picture. And then over time, you just get used to it, right? Same with a new car, new shoes or whatever. Your enjoyment levels tend to return to baseline. That's hedonic adaptation. And this sort of suggests that maybe it's more experiences, right? Because of hedonic adaptation. Typically that's with products, so that would kind of point the finger to experiences as being where happiness is. But on the other hand, once you've paid for an experience, it's gone, right? So the TV might not bring me as much enjoyment as it did on day one, but I can still point to a TV, right? What happened to the money I spend for at Disneyland? There's nothing, I can't really point to anything. And so this would sort of suggest it's material goods, right? So without really knowing the result, a reasonable person could kind of make either prediction. So what did they find? So pre-purchase, before people actually made purchases, they were asked, how much value do you expect to get out of it? And so pre-purchase, what do you see? Right, people expect more out of material goods. So 2 weeks after people have made the purchase, then they were asked that, the question, how much did you think you'd get? How much did you actually get, right? Was your $12 burger worth $12, or was it worth 14, or was it worth 8? And what did people say?
Trips, experiences.
Somebody, Zhenya, interpret this for us.
Well, it's more now.
What is more now?
I mean, we thought that the experience wouldn't be worth so much. But it appears that it's more.
Yeah, exactly. So beforehand, people expect more out of experience, material goods, but after the fact, once people have made the purchase, then they actually value experiences more. And then they followed up 4 weeks after, and they found the same thing. So it seems like people get more out of experiences than they do out of stuff. But that's not what most people expect. This, by the way, this is one study. This kind of thing has been replicated in lots of different studies. This is kind of, there's a lot, so I guess what I'm saying is this isn't just one study, there's a lot of research that kind of points in this direction, which is that people get more out of buying experiences than they do out of buying stuff. Go ahead, Jacob.
I was gonna ask, is this culture specific or is this like worldwide?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. My hunch is just knowing researchers, somebody's done this in a different culture. I've never seen that literature though, so I don't know. It's a great question though. Jacob?
I was gonna say, isn't the experience more enjoyable because it's oftentimes more rare? Like, I don't know how many times you've been skydiving. I've been one time, and it was like 2 years ago, but I reference it all the time. I bought a TV, but I don't reference a TV every single day.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so, just by virtue of kind of because you can't, most people don't make it through the day without buying something. So, it kind of stands out. That could be definitely part of it.
Is this affected at all by the change in like cameras, pictures, and videos and stuff? Because I thought that maybe that would affect it. Because you have the experience, it's a good experience, right? But the experience is gone, is what you're talking about.
Right.
But then now everybody's got their cell phones and cameras, and like you get pictures and videos and all this stuff, so you can like, even though it was just an experience, you can share it with people and look back at it and see it over and over and over. Is that like?
So that would seem to kind of, so the original literature came out in about 2007, 2008, which is before everything was, so people could post stuff online, but it wasn't like it is today, where that's like, it's online or it didn't happen, right? And so I think if anything, this would kind of accelerate those differences or accentuate those differences. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't think it would, so I would say two things. It's not responsible for it, but it probably, at least today, contributes to it a little bit. So this is just kind of a small example, but they did this survey a couple, it's been a while, because it was but they asked people lined up, expecting to make a purchase. They asked people how happy they were, pretty basic survey, but it's interesting. People in line for a new iPhone or people in line for Comic-Con, so this was in San Diego, so you could, similar population. Who would you expect to be happier? Comic-Con, right? And that's what they found. Why? I'll tell you why. I'm glad you asked. So people's minds tend to wander. I have a unique insight into this, being a professor and looking out as students. Not unoccasionally are clearly somewhere else mentally. Miranda right now, I don't know where she is, but is not here. Right? So they've done some pretty cool research on this. And what they did was, to sign up for this research, you'd get this app installed on your phone that would, at completely random times, notify you and ask people what they were thinking about. Were they thinking about what they were doing right now? Were they thinking about something that had happened previously, something that was going to happen, combination of those two? And so they collected tons of data by just randomly kind of messaging people out of nowhere and asking them what they were thinking about. And what they found is about 30% of the time when people are reading, their minds are wandering. So if you just, pick a random time when somebody's reading and you message them or you just tap them on the shoulder, you've got about a 1 in 3 chance that they're not actually thinking about what they're reading right there. Their minds are wandering. People are in conversation, about 30% of the time their minds are wandering. In class, anyone want to guess? 15, thank you. Did you say 15 or 50? 15. Okay, thanks.
Depends on the class. 80% is the legs.
I don't actually know, I just was trying to see what you guys would say. I'm always looking for a chance to take offense at something. But in general, no matter what people are doing, people's minds tend to wander. The question is, where do minds wander? And the answer is to things that make people depressed and anxious. So typically when you think about people thinking about the past, oftentimes they're thinking about things that make them feel guilty or depressed. People thinking about the future tend to be kind of fixated on something that makes them anxious. This is why, has anyone heard of mindfulness? I'm sure. Raise your hand if you know something about mindfulness. Do you want to talk about that?
It's just essentially knowing what you're feeling and what you're thinking and what's going on inside.
Yeah, it's being mentally present and being aware of what your thoughts are, where you are, and calling, once your mind wanders, you acknowledge that, bring yourself back to the present. And this has been a powerful kind of direction in mental health because it really helps people who are anxious or depressed because as your mind wanders, it really detracts from your happiness, right? Whether you're thinking about things in the future or things in the past, it tends to detract from happiness. So again, in these surveys, when you ask people out of nowhere, what are you thinking about? Oftentimes it's this kind of stuff. Jealousies, slights, stuff that you're worried about. So when minds wander, people get down. So what does this have to do with stuff and experiences? I'm glad you asked.
Well, I would say, especially with experiences, like hopefully you can if you have something positive to look forward to, or if you just did something that made you happy, when your mind wanders, hopefully it will like allow you to be happy about something instead of depressed because you have something to look forward to or just did something cool.
That's exactly it, man. Nailed that. So if you've got something to look forward to or something exciting that just happened, then that allows minds to wander in sort of more positive direction, right? Especially if you got something, you've got a trip to look forward to, or you just got back from somewhere, right? Then you just got back from the beach or something. When your mind wanders, it tends to go somewhere that's less depressing. So trips, concerts, parties, dinners and stuff, you actually get the benefit from those before you actually go, right? Because then you anticipate it. So one of the reasons that experiences seem to benefit people more than stuff does is that you get the benefit before you actually have the experience. The other thing is, when people are thinking about a trip or something, the primary feeling is anticipation. When it's a thing that you want, it's a little bit more tinged in the direction of impatience, right? And so looking forward to experiences again is you get more out of it. And then it's not just looking forward, but looking backwards too. There's a difference. Even bad experiences can provide good memories. So the proverbial rain on the wedding day, right? Does it ruin the wedding if it rains? It can be kind of an awesome experience, right? It can be fun, and you can still. So when an experience that you paid for goes sideways, even that can be enjoyable, right? Raining at Disneyland. I took my kids, my wife and I took our kids up to a cabin last weekend, and we got a flat tire in the middle of nowhere, no cell service, and I didn't have a spare. It was really, it was a not a worst case scenario because nobody got shot or killed, but it was about as bad of an experience as you could kind of come up with, bad a scenario as you could come up with reasonably, right? And then we ended up like 4 hours later after, a bunch of problems, we ended up in the cabin. The cabin was way too small. I slept in a recliner because there wasn't enough room in the bed. My son woke up all night screaming. And so you would look at that and it was, in a lot of ways it sucks. In a lot of ways it sucked, but it's actually a good memory, right? Because it's, even though it was not what I expected, and in a lot of ways it was worse than what I expected, there's still something kind of sweet about the whole thing, right? And that's not the case with stuff, right? You buy a nice TV, and you get a crack in it or something like that. There's no way to smile about that.
There is. I threw a Wii remote through it, and then my dad put a Band-Aid on the biggest crack, so that's good memories.
Your dad's a better man than I am. My kids put a crack in my TV. I'll put a crack in that. All right, so one of the reasons that experiences seem to provide more happiness than stuff is just when our minds wander, do they go somewhere positive or somewhere negative? So I'm talking about my kids a lot. This last Christmas, my daughter, who's 6 now, Caroline, she's 5, she said, "Dad, do you know what I love most about Christmas?" Any guesses what she said? Presents, yeah. So in her mind, most adults don't say this, right? Most grown-ups don't think about, when they think about Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, They're not, it's not the material goods, it's not, right? So if we're asking this question, what contributes more to happiness? Stuff or experiences? Kids aren't gonna answer the same way adults do. So the question is, at what point do kids resemble adults when it comes to stuff or experiences? Right, because at 6, this, my daughter's pretty standard as far as this goes. 6-year-olds don't want experiences, they want stuff, right? And you can't really blame them either, right? Because, toys are fun, they're there, you can touch them. Whereas, time with family, it's like, that's what I get out of Christmas, but that's intangible. And so, you can kind of see why kids like this, they like stuff that they can play with. Whereas adults, it's a little bit harder to explain why you like time with family, Michaela.
Is this always the case? Because I know like when you have a father or somebody that's out in the military, you don't see him a lot. But then on Christmas when the dad comes home, the kids are actually more excited to spend time with dad than with the stuff.
Yeah, that's, I don't have a hard time believing that at all. That would seem like a special case.
Like, that's how it was with us when we were little. Because we always liked Christmas because dad came home and we did stuff.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, that's like getting a present. Like that's something that you haven't had for a little while. So like,
Bless you.
I guess it's a little kid.
You can tell a lot about a person by the way they sneeze.
What did my
You say that every time
You
she
don't even wanna
sneezes.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, what was that? I got sidetracked.
No, I don't know. I was just saying that like dad coming home like that is kind of like a present, like in the sense of like you haven't had it for a while, so like it's something that you get to interact with.
I don't know who else is parents. Who else are parents in here?
Our parents?
Our parents, yeah. If you gave your kids a chance between a $5 toy and spending an hour with you, whose kids would take an hour with you? Yeah. So I think the military thing is probably an exception to the rule, which is kids want stuff more than their parents. So question is, when do people shift, and why? I'm going to start with kind of this interesting concept of theory of mind, because theory of mind seems to be an important, skill in appreciating experiences over stuff. So theory of mind is the idea that other people have thoughts and feelings that are different from your own. Children, very young children, don't understand that other people have their own thoughts that belong to them. They assume that their thoughts are your thoughts. And I'll give you a couple kind of memorable, hopefully, examples. But theory of mind begins to develop around age 4 and then develops over time. What's that?
I don't know who the psychologist is, but there's some kind of drawing experiment where kids are supposed to draw something, and then you ask them what they drew, and then and even though you can't really recognize what it is, they'll be like, "Well, it's a face," because they think that you're thinking the same thing as they are and seeing the same thing as you.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids are always drawing things, and I don't want to insult them by saying, "Hey, what's that?" So I always say, "Tell me about it." All right, so here's theory of mind. You've got 2 dolls and a basket in the box. Sally, I'm going to ask one of you to answer this. Sally, here's Sally, here's Ann. Sally has a toy car. Sally puts the toy car in the basket and leaves the room. See that? While Sally is out of the room, Anne takes the toy car and puts it
And he's going in.
in the box. When Sally comes back, where do you think she will look for the toy car? Shannon.
What?
Where is she gonna look for the toy car?
Where she bought his last.
Which is?
It's always in the last place you look.
Because you don't keep looking after you found it, right?
I don't think that's right. It's just like whoever was flying. People don't know anymore.
All right. So people who say the basket appreciate that Sally and Anne have different thoughts, right? People who say that. Why would you say the box? Why would somebody say the box?
Because you know that it's in the box, but you can't perceive that they know it's in the box.
Right. You can't. You don't make you don't really distinguish between your own thoughts and another person's thoughts, right? And that's what theories of mind is about. And so this kind of tendency to the appreciation of experiences over stuff seems to require a theory of mind. You have to be able, in order to kind of enjoy other people's company and time with them. Part of that requires that you understand that they're different people and have different thoughts. Another example of this, so as a kid, what's in the box? Hudson, what's in the box? Wrong. Whoops, wrong. It's pencils. So you show a kid that, and then you say, what would somebody else think is in the box, right? And once you know it's pencils, some kids will assume that other people would guess it was pencils, right? Before they've developed theory of mind. Once they have theory of mind, then they understand that somebody else who doesn't know is gonna assume it's cookies. So, talk about a couple studies that looked at kind of at what age do kids appreciate stuff less, and what age do they appreciate experiences? So a couple different age groups. And the first study, what they did is they just asked people in different age groups, what makes you happy, right? Just answer that question, what makes you happy? And people just collect open-ended responses. Those of you who have kids, what would your kids say? Toys. Yeah. So, and then they classified it as objects or experiences. So some examples would be like my dolls, they make me smile. Experiences, getting a piggyback ride. And so this is what they found. 3 to 5, huge difference, right? Objects much preferred. This gap kind of narrows over time, but at a young age. So the point is that with this age range they haven't found, at what point you start to appreciate stuff more than experiences. Experiences more than stuff. So in this next study they did happiness collages, where you made a collage of all the stuff that makes you happy. Some of which are objects and others are experiences. So some examples of experiences stuff. Which is pretty typical 4-year-old boys collage. Mostly objects, some experiences. 17-year-old boys, mostly experiences and a few objects. and this is what they found. So total number of objects versus experiences. And
15?
so about 13, 15 is when they are about the same. This age is where they don't really, they're about equal. By 16, 17, that's where they start to really distinguish, and they begin to resemble adults as far as the preference for experiences over stuff. So that's the total number. You can also look at it by just the proportion, because you could have, some people might have 4 things on their collage, other people will have 32 things on their collage. So it's not just the total number, but the proportions that matter. And so, but it's the same thing if you just look at proportions, right? 13 to 15, they're about the same. 16, 17, that's when people get more happiness out of experiences and stuff. This third study was longitudinal. So what they did is they did that same kind of collage study, but they repeated it 2 years later. So they had a big group of people. They made everybody make a collage, and then they came back 2 years later and had them repeat it. So this is a pretty strong test of this idea. And so T1, T2 means time 1, time 2. So ages 4 to 6 to ages 6 to 8. What do you see? What do you see here? Decrease. Who would describe this as dramatic? Pretty unremarkable. There might be some changes, but they're pretty much identical, right? From 4 to 6 to 6 to 8, not much change there. So 12 to 14. How would you describe that difference? To what?
Enjoy experiences more.
So if you recall on that previous study, it was 14, 15, they were about the same. And that's what they found in this one too. I mean, it's a little bit more tilted to experiences, but not as much as this was tilted towards objects. And then, so again, the big change comes 16, 17, right? So 14, 15, again, they're about the same. Experiences slightly preferred. And then here, by 16, 17, people just like it. They get a lot more out of experiences than they do out of stuff. So kind of some conclusions. From 3 to 12, people like stuff. People, kids especially prefer stuff over experiences. 13 to 14, it's about the same. 16, 17, that's when, it's probably no coincidence that at 18, this is when we consider people adults, right? And they're actually, with regards to preferences for stuff and experiences, they resemble adults. And then this also seems to require theory of mind. All right. So that's everything for this last test.
You don't
What's that?
Oh, you're probably good.